I am Amanda Taylor, 34 years old, standing frozen in my own living room. The door swings open without warning. My mother Karen and brother Jason walk in uninvited faces cold as stone. "You think this house is yours?" Mom scoffs. "You do not even have a family. We will take it now." My throat tightens as Jason drops his suitcases on my floor. Everything I worked for, about to be stolen by the people who abandoned me when I needed them most. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe if you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted. Life before everything fell apart was what most would call successful. I had been working at Horizon Marketing for 5 years, steadily climbing the corporate ladder until I reached a senior position managing our biggest client accounts. The pay was excellent, the benefits even better, and my coworkers had become like a second family. I took pride in being the reliable one, the person everyone could count on to deliver results under pressure. My actual family consisted of my mother Karen, my older brother Jason, and my sister Stephanie. We were never the picture-perfect family from television commercials, but I always believed we had a solid foundation. Dad left when I was 12, and Mom had to work 2 jobs to keep us afloat. That experience shaped us all differently. I became determined to achieve financial independence. Jason developed a sense of entitlement, believing the world owed him something for our difficult childhood. Stephanie became the peacekeeper, always trying to smooth over conflicts. When I turned 32, I achieved what felt like the pinnacle of my personal American dream. After years of saving countless overtime hours and careful financial planning, I purchased my own home. It was a charming 3-bedroom craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood just 15 minutes from downtown. The moment I received those keys felt like pure magic. I remember standing in the empty living room sunlight streaming through the bay windows thinking, "This is mine. I did this." The house needed work, sure. The kitchen cabinets were outdated, the hardwood floors needed refinishing, and the backyard was overgrown. But each imperfection represented a future project, a chance to transform this house into exactly what I wanted. I spent weekends painting walls, evenings, researching appliances, and lunch breaks, scrolling through furniture websites. Every paycheck went toward making this house feel like home. On the surface, my family seemed happy for me. Mom came to the housewarming party bringing a potted plant and commenting on how nice the neighborhood seemed. Jason walked through each room nodding appreciatively while mentioning how much the property values must be increasing. Stephanie helped me unpack boxes and arrange furniture, genuinely excited about my achievement. But looking back, I can see the hairline fractures that existed in our relationships. There were comments that seemed innocent at the time, but carried undercurrents of resentment. "Must be nice to afford all this space for just one person," Mom once remarked while visiting. Jason would joke about moving into my spare bedroom when he needed a place to crash. I laughed these comments off, attributing them to normal family banter. What I did not fully appreciate was how often my family had come to rely on me financially. Mom would call with unexpected bills she could not cover, car repairs she could not afford. Jason had a pattern of borrowing money for various business ventures that never materialized into anything substantial. Even Stephanie, though more responsible occasionally, needed help making rent when her hours at the hospital were cut. I never minded helping. In fact, I took pride in being able to support my family. When Mom needed $2,000 for emergency dental work, I transferred the money without hesitation. When Jason racked up credit card debt, I helped him set up a payment plan and covered the first few months. These were not loans in my mind. They were gifts, expressions of love, and loyalty to the people who raised me. My home represented more than just a financial investment. After years of living in overpriced, undersized apartments with unreliable landlords, I finally had a place that was truly mine. A place where no one could raise the rent unexpectedly or tell me I could not paint the walls. A place where I could put down roots and create the stability I had craved since childhood. The neighborhood was everything I had hoped for. Mature oak trees lined the streets, families walked their dogs in the evenings, and neighbors waved when I collected my mail. I planted a small vegetable garden in the backyard, joined the neighborhood association, and finally adopted the cat I had always wanted but could not have in my previous rentals. I believed my family understood what this achievement meant to me. I thought they were proud of how far I had come, how I had created this life for myself through hard work and determination. I invited them over for dinner, regularly sent pictures of my latest home improvement projects, and always made sure the guest rooms were ready in case anyone needed to stay. Little did I know that beneath the surface, smiles and congratulatory messages, lurked a current of jealousy and entitlement that would reveal itself when I was at my most vulnerable. Everything I thought I knew about my family would soon be tested in ways I never imagined possible. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning, calling all employees to an emergency meeting in the main conference room. There had been rumors circulating for weeks about financial troubles at Horizon Marketing, but management had consistently denied them. As I took my seat among my anxious colleagues, our CEO entered with a grim expression that confirmed my worst fears before he even spoke. I regret to inform you that Horizon Marketing will be ceasing operations effective immediately. The room erupted in shocked murmurs and desperate questions. As the CEO explained, poor investment decisions by the board combined with the loss of 3 major clients had created a financial hole too deep to climb out of. The company was declaring bankruptcy. We would receive 2 weeks of severance pay, and that was it. 5 years of dedication, countless late nights, and successful campaigns, all ending in a 15-minute meeting. I walked back to my desk in a daze, boxing up personal items while trying to process what this meant. My mortgage payment was substantial, reflecting the quality of the neighborhood and size of the house. I had savings, of course, always being careful with money, but without a steady income, those savings would disappear quickly. That first night at home was surreal. I sat at my kitchen island spreadsheet open on my laptop, calculating exactly how long I could stay afloat. 3 months comfortably, maybe 5 if I cut back drastically. That should be enough time to find a new position, I reasoned. With my experience and track record, surely someone would snap me up quickly. But the job market proved far more challenging than I anticipated. The economic downturn that had affected Horizon had impacted the entire industry. Marketing budgets were the first to be cut in troubled times, and suddenly the market was flooded with talented professionals all competing for a shrinking pool of positions. I applied everywhere, customizing each cover letter, reaching out to every contact in my professional network. Interviews came sporadically, but each ended the same way. We have decided to go with a candidate whose experience better aligns with our needs. Or worse, we have decided not to fill this position at this time due to budget constraints. 3 months passed, then 4. My carefully budgeted savings began to dwindle alarmingly. The mortgage payment loomed larger each month. I cut expenses ruthlessly. No more takeout, no subscriptions, no new clothes. I turned down the thermostat and wore sweaters indoors. I sold furniture I had lovingly selected. Still, the mathematical reality was unavoidable. Without income, I would eventually lose my home. It was then, at my lowest point, that I decided to reach out to my family. I had always been the helper, the provider, the one they turned to. Surely they would return that support now that I needed it. I was not looking for handouts, just a temporary loan to bridge the gap until I found employment. Maybe Mom could spare some of the money I had given her over the years. Perhaps Jason, who had recently mentioned a successful business deal, could help with a month of mortgage payments. I called my mother first, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained the situation. The silence on the other end of the line stretched uncomfortably before she responded. I do not think I can help you right now, Amanda. Money is tight for everyone. I understand, Mom, but I have helped you so many times. I am just asking for a small loan until I get back on my feet. That was different, she said, her voice turning cold. You always had plenty to spare. You always thought you were better than us with your big corporate job and your fancy house. Maybe this is a good lesson in humility. Her words felt like a physical blow. I ended the call shortly after, tears streaming down my face. Still, I tried Jason next, hoping my brother would be more understanding. He was even worse. Who told you to buy such an expensive house anyway? He scoffed. You always had to show off, did not you? Always had to prove you were the successful one. Jason, I am not asking for much. Just enough to cover one mortgage payment while I line up some freelance work. Well, I just put a lot of money into my new business venture. I cannot afford to bail you out of your bad decisions. New business venture. The same brother who had borrowed thousands from me for his ventures that never materialized was now lecturing me about financial responsibility. My last hope was Stephanie. When I reached her, she at least sounded genuinely concerned, but her response was no more helpful. I wish I could help, Amanda, I really do. But you know how tight things are for me. And honestly, Mom would be furious if she found out I gave you money after she refused. So you are choosing her side? I asked, disbelief coloring my voice. There are no sides, Stephanie insisted, though her tone suggested otherwise. But you know how Mom can be. I cannot afford to upset her right now while I am living under her roof. That was the final revelation. My family had always been happy to take my help, my money, my support. But the moment I needed them, they not only refused to help, but seemed almost glad to see me struggling. The most painful part was hearing my mother say, "You always think you are better than us," and my brother's accusation that I was showing off with my home. They had interpreted my success not as an achievement to celebrate, but as a personal affront to them. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. The family I had supported through countless difficulties had abandoned me at the first sign of trouble. The realization was devastating, but it also became the catalyst for what would happen next. The weeks following my family's rejection were the darkest of my life. I found myself struggling not just financially, but emotionally. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket, making even the simplest tasks feel monumental. Getting out of bed, showering, preparing meals, everything required effort I barely had. The house that had once been my greatest joy now felt like a weight around my neck, a constant reminder of what I stood to lose. Sleep became elusive. I would lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, mind racing with calculations and worst-case scenarios. During the day, I would send out job applications mechanically, each rejection email further eroding my self-confidence. The professional network I had once relied on seemed to evaporate as the economic downturn continued. Former colleagues were either struggling themselves or had moved on to companies that were not hiring. It was during one of these sleepless nights, scrolling through job boards at 3 a.m, that I had a realization. I could not continue putting all my eggs in the corporate employment basket. If traditional jobs were not available, I needed to create my own opportunities. The next morning, I made a list of all my marketable skills: content creation, graphic design, social media management, brand strategy, copywriting. These were services businesses needed regardless of economic conditions. Perhaps instead of seeking one full-time job, I could piece together multiple smaller clients. With nothing to lose, I created a simple website portfolio, reached out to small businesses in my area, and offered my services at competitive rates. The first client was a local bakery needing help with social media. The pay was a fraction of what I was used to, but it was something. Then came a boutique clothing store requiring email marketing assistance. A startup needed help crafting their brand voice. Slowly, painfully slowly, I began cobbling together an income. The work was demanding in a way my corporate job never had been. Instead of focusing on a few major clients with substantial budgets, I was juggling dozens of small businesses, each with unique needs and limited resources. My days stretched into nights as I learned to maximize every billable hour. The dining room table became my office, covered in notes, my laptop perpetually open. During this time, an unexpected friendship developed with my neighbor, Laura Hudson. She noticed my car was always in the driveway and stopped by one afternoon with a homemade casserole. That simple act of kindness broke through the isolation I had been feeling. "I got laid off last year," she confided as we sat on my front porch. "Took me 8 months to find something new. It is brutal out there." That conversation led to regular check-ins. Laura would bring coffee on Sunday mornings, and we would talk about everything and nothing. She never pitied me, never offered empty platitudes about things working out. Instead, she listened, shared her own experiences, and occasionally provided practical help, like reviewing my client proposals or suggesting local businesses that might need marketing assistance. Another pivotal relationship formed with Michael Ramirez, owner of a small local restaurant who became one of my first clients. What started as a simple website update project evolved into a comprehensive marketing strategy. Michael paid on time, recommended me to other business owners, and eventually became a trusted friend. "My family thought I was crazy to open a restaurant during a recession," he told me once. "Sometimes the people closest to you understand you the least." Those words resonated deeply. While my family had dismissed my struggles, these relative strangers, Laura and Michael, had shown more genuine support than those connected to me by blood. The financial situation remained precarious. There were days when I would check my bank account and feel panic rising in my throat. I called the mortgage company countless times, negotiating for forbearance options, loan modifications, anything to buy more time. I learned to stretch groceries to find joy in small free pleasures, like hiking in the nearby park or reading books borrowed from the library. 6 months after losing my job, I faced the hardest decision yet. My car, while reliable, was worth a significant amount. Selling it would provide enough money to cover several mortgage payments, buying me more time to build my freelance business. The sacrifice would mean relying on public transportation, which was inconvenient in our suburban area. But the math was clear. The car went, and the mortgage payment stayed current. Through all of this, I maintained minimal contact with my family. Stephanie would text occasionally, surface-level messages asking how I was doing. I responded with equally vague assurances that I was managing. Mom called once, not to check on my welfare, but to ask if I could still contribute to a family gift for a distant cousin's wedding. When I explained I could not afford it, she sighed dramatically and said, "We will just have to tell everyone you chose not to participate." I let the hurt wash over me and resolved to stop expecting anything different. Jason never reached out at all. The work gradually increased. A client would be satisfied and refer another small business. My portfolio grew more diverse. I learned to negotiate better rates as my expertise became more valuable. The dining room expanded to a proper home office setup in the spare bedroom. I developed systems to manage multiple clients, efficiently created templates to streamline repetitive tasks, and established boundaries to prevent burnout. There were setbacks. Clients who paid late or tried to expand the scope of work without additional compensation. Technical challenges as I taught myself new software programs and platforms. The persistent fear that this fragile financial ecosystem I had built could collapse at any moment. But there were victories too. The first month, I earned enough to cover all my essential expenses without dipping into what remained of my savings. The first 5-star review from a client whose business saw real growth from my marketing strategy. The day I realized I had gone 24 hours without anxiety about money. 1 year after Horizon Marketing closed its doors, I sat at my kitchen island much as I had that first night of unemployment. This time, instead of calculating how long I could survive, I was reviewing a spreadsheet of client projects, income projections, and growth strategies. The business I had built out of desperation had become something sustainable, something with potential. I was not just surviving anymore. I was beginning to thrive again on my own terms. The house that had almost been my financial ruin had become the headquarters of my new career. Each room held memories of both despair and determination. The kitchen, where I had cried over rejection letters, was now where I celebrated new client acquisitions. The living room, where I had once lain paralyzed with anxiety, was now where I conducted confident video calls with potential clients. I had done this entirely on my own without the safety net of family I had always assumed would be there. The realization was both empowering and sobering. I had discovered strength I never knew I possessed, but also learned harsh truths about the people I had trusted most. Both lessons would prove valuable for what was to come. 18 months after losing my job at Horizon Marketing, my freelance business had evolved beyond anything I could have imagined during those dark early days. What began as desperate scrambling for any paying work had transformed into a boutique marketing agency, specializing in helping small businesses compete against larger corporations. I had named it Phoenix Marketing, a nod to rising from the ashes of my corporate career. My client list had grown to 20 regular accounts, with new inquiries coming weekly through referrals. The workload had become impossible to handle alone, leading to my first major business decision: hiring help. I brought on Alicia Peterson, a recent marketing graduate, as my assistant. Her fresh perspective and technical skills complemented my experience and client relationship abilities. 2 months later, I hired Daniel Robertson, a talented graphic designer whose work elevated our visual offerings. The spare bedroom no longer sufficed as an office with 3 people working together. I took another leap of faith and leased a small commercial space just 10 minutes from my home. Nothing fancy, just 500 square feet with good natural light and enough room for our growing operation. The day we moved in, placing the Phoenix Marketing sign on the door, I felt a surge of pride unlike anything I had experienced in my corporate career. This was something I had built from nothing. Financially, things had stabilized considerably. Not only was I covering my mortgage comfortably, but I had also begun rebuilding my savings and making extra payments toward the principal. The house that had nearly been lost was now more securely mine than ever. I had even begun tackling some of the renovation projects I had planned before the layoff, starting with refinishing the hardwood floors throughout the main level. My personal life had expanded as well. Laura had introduced me to her circle of friends, mostly professional women in their 30s and 40s who welcomed me warmly. Michael and I had developed a friendship that extended beyond our business relationship, occasionally meeting for hiking or checking out new restaurants. These connections formed a support system I had never realized I was missing when I was focused solely on work and family. Speaking of family, I had maintained my distance. Stephanie would still text occasionally, and I would respond politely but briefly. I had not spoken to my mother or Jason in over a year. The hurt remained, but it had transformed from an acute pain to a dull awareness. I had accepted that the unconditional support I had always extended to them was not reciprocal. It was a difficult truth, but acknowledging it had freed me from expectations that only led to disappointment. Then came the chance encounter that would set everything in motion. I was working at my favorite coffee shop, taking advantage of their reliable Wi-Fi, while some minor electrical work was being done at our office. Lost in concentration, I did not notice someone approaching my table until she spoke. "Amanda, is that you?" I looked up to find Stephanie standing there clutching a to-go cup, eyes wide with surprise. It had been nearly a year since I had seen her in person. She looked tired with dark circles under her eyes, and her clothes slightly rumpled. "Stephanie, hi." I gestured to the empty chair across from me. "Do you want to sit?" She hesitated before sliding into the seat. "You look great," she said, studying my face. "Really great, actually." "Thanks. Been busy with work." I closed my laptop, giving her my full attention. "How have you been?" She glanced down at her coffee cup. "Honestly, not great. Things have been challenging." Over the next hour, Stephanie filled me in on what had been happening with the family I had distanced myself from. Mom had lost her job 6 months ago and had been unable to find new employment at her age. Jason's latest business venture had failed spectacularly, leaving him with substantial debt. They had been forced to move out of Mom's apartment into a smaller, less expensive place in a neighborhood Stephanie described as sketchy at best. Mom does not know I am talking to you, she confessed. She still gets angry whenever your name comes up, says you abandoned the family when you got successful. The irony was not lost on me. She abandoned me when I was at my lowest point, Stephanie. You all did. She had the grace to look ashamed. I know. I should have done more. Been braver. You know how it is with Mom and Jason. They have such strong personalities, and I was living with them, depending on them. And now? Now we are all struggling. Jason cannot hold a job longer than a few weeks. Mom is depressed all the time. The new apartment is tiny with just 2 bedrooms. I am sleeping on a pull-out couch in the living room. She paused, looking at me with hesitant eyes. They talk about you, you know, about how you must be doing well in your big house all alone. Something in her tone set off warning bells. What exactly do they say? Stephanie shifted uncomfortably. Just that it does not seem fair. That family should help family. That you have all that space while we are crammed into a small apartment. Have they forgotten that I asked for their help when I was about to lose everything? That they not only refused but seemed glad I was struggling? They have a way of rewriting history, Stephanie admitted. In their version, you never really needed help. You were just being dramatic. I felt a familiar anger rising but pushed it down. Stephanie, are you here to ask for money? Because if you are in a tough spot, I can help you. Just you, though. Not them. Her eyes widened. No, yes, things are tight, but that is not why I reached out. I miss my sister. I miss having someone sane to talk to. Part of me wanted to believe her, but caution, born from experience, held me back. I appreciate that. I have missed you too. But I need to be clear about boundaries. I have worked incredibly hard to rebuild my life after nearly losing everything. I cannot risk letting toxic relationships back in. I understand completely, she said quickly. I would never ask you to let Mom or Jason back into your life. They have not changed. If anything, they are worse now that things are hard. We parted with a tentative plan to meet for dinner the following week. As I watched her leave, I felt conflicted. The protective walls I had built around my life had served me well, but completely writing off my only sister seemed unnecessarily harsh. Still, something about our conversation left me unsettled. That feeling would prove prophetic in the coming weeks, as Stephanie's chance appearance was not as coincidental as it had initially seemed. It was in fact the first move in a calculated plan that would soon bring my estranged family crashing back into my carefully reconstructed life in the most shocking way possible. 2 years to the day after I lost my job at Horizon Marketing, I was enjoying a rare Sunday morning at home. Phoenix Marketing had grown to the point where I typically worked 6 days a week, but I had made a commitment to myself to preserve Sundays as a day of rest and rejuvenation. The morning routine had become sacred coffee on the back patio, classical music playing softly, and absolutely no checking of work emails. I had just settled into my favorite chair with a novel when the doorbell rang. Unusual for 9:30 in the morning, but not alarming. Perhaps Laura stopping by for an impromptu coffee or a package delivery requiring signature. I set my book down and walked to the front door, unprepared for what waited on the other side. Karen and Jason stood on my porch, both carrying large suitcases. My mother wore an expression of determined entitlement, while my brother looked somewhere between smug and aggressive. Before I could speak, they pushed past me into the foyer. "Nice place," Jason commented, looking around with appraising eyes. "Looks even better than I remembered." I stood frozen, hand still on the door handle. What are you doing here? How did you know where I live? We are family, Amanda, Mom replied, as if that explained everything. Stephanie mentioned you still had this place, said you were doing quite well for yourself these days. The betrayal stung. Stephanie and I had reconnected cautiously over the past few weeks. She had never mentioned telling Mom and Jason about my current situation. In fact, she had explicitly promised not to. That does not explain why you are here. With luggage, my voice sounded calmer than I felt. Mom set her suitcase down and straightened her shoulders. We have had a difficult time, Amanda. Our apartment building is being condemned, something about code violations. We need a place to stay while we figure things out. And you thought you would just show up at my door after 2 years of no contact, after refusing to help me when I needed it most. The audacity was breathtaking. Jason stepped forward, his posture subtly threatening. Look, we know you have plenty of room here. 3 bedrooms, right? You only need 1. Family helps family. Family helps family, I repeated slowly. Interesting you should say that. Where was this family spirit when I was about to lose this house? When I called begging for just enough to make 1 mortgage payment? You always exaggerate. Mom waved dismissively. You were never in real trouble. You always land on your feet. I landed on my feet because I had no choice. Because I worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week. Because I sold my car, cut every possible expense, and rebuilt my entire career from scratch. Not because of any help from you. Mom's expression hardened. Well, we actually need help. Real help. We have nowhere to go. Your brother and I have sold our furniture, given up our apartment. We need to stay here. The realization dawned slowly then, all at once. You have already given up your apartment. Before even asking if you could stay with me? The calculation behind this move was stunning. They had created a crisis to force my hand. We knew you would say yes once you understood the situation, Jason said with a shrug. You have all this space. We are family. Where is Stephanie? I asked, suddenly noticing her absence. She is bringing the rest of our things, Mom replied. She will be here later. So Stephanie was fully involved in this plan. The coffee shop, meeting, the reconnection, all of it had been orchestrated to gather intelligence about my situation and lay groundwork for this invasion. I need you both to leave, I said firmly. This is my home. I did not invite you here. I cannot and will not let you stay. Jason's face darkened. Do not be ridiculous. We have nowhere else to go. That is not my problem. You should have asked before giving up your apartment. You should have asked before showing up on my doorstep with luggage. You should have helped me when I needed it, if you expected help in return. Mom stepped closer, her voice taking on the manipulative tone I remembered from childhood. What will people think if they hear you turned your own mother out onto the street? Your own brother? What kind of person does that? I do not care what people think. I care about maintaining the boundaries I have worked hard to establish. I care about protecting the life I have rebuilt. You always were selfish, Jason spat. Always thinking about yourself first. You do not even have a real family, no husband, no kids. Just your precious career and your big empty house. You owe us. That statement, you do not even have a real family, cut deeper than he could know. It targeted an insecurity I had grappled with during my darkest moments. But instead of weakening my resolve, it strengthened it. This was exactly why I had distanced myself from these toxic relationships. I do not owe you anything, I said, my voice steady. And I want you to leave my house now. We are not leaving, Mom declared, crossing her arms. We have nowhere to go. If you try to throw us out, we will tell everyone what a terrible daughter you are. We will contest the ownership of this house. Your father always meant for family property to stay in the family. This was a ludicrous threat. Dad had no involvement with this house. I had purchased it entirely on my own, with my own money, years after he left. but the mention of potential legal challenges, however, baseless, indicated how far they were willing to go. "This is not up for debate," I insisted. "This is my house, purchased with my money, maintained with my hard work. You have no claim to it whatsoever." Jason set his jaw stubbornly. "We are staying. End of discussion. Now which bedroom will be mine? I want the one with the best lighting." I watched in disbelief as my brother picked up his suitcase and headed for the stairs, my mother following suit. They were simply going to move in against my will, counting on family obligation to prevent me from stopping them. As they ascended the stairs, I noticed something that confirmed my worst suspicions. The luggage they carried was not just overnight bags. These were large suitcases, the kind used for permanent relocations. And poking out of Mom's partially open bag was a stack of mail and what looked like financial documents. They had not just given up their apartment. They had fully moved out with no intention of finding another place. This was not a temporary visit or even an extended stay. This was an attempted takeover of my home, orchestrated and planned in advance with Stephanie's help. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, but beneath it burned a new emotion: resolve. I had not fought this hard to rebuild my life, only to have it commandeered by the very people who had abandoned me in my time of need. As I stood in my foyer listening to them bickering upstairs about which bedroom each would take, I made a decision that would permanently alter my relationship with my family. They had forced my hand, and now they would face the consequences. I stepped quietly onto the front porch, closing the door behind me. With hands that trembled slightly but mind absolutely clear, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "I need to report trespassers in my home," I stated calmly when the operator answered. "Two individuals have entered my property without permission and are refusing to leave." The operator took my information efficiently, asking if the trespassers were armed or violent. I explained they were not physically dangerous, but were attempting to move into my home against my will. When she asked about my relationship to these individuals, I hesitated only briefly before answering. "They are my estranged mother and brother. We have had no meaningful contact for 2 years. They arrived unannounced with luggage and are refusing my requests to leave." The operator assured me officers would be dispatched immediately. I remained on the porch, not wanting to confront Karen and Jason alone again. Within 15 minutes, a police cruiser pulled up and 2 officers approached my house. "Miss Taylor," the female officer asked. Her nameplate read, "Collins. I am Officer Collins. This is Officer Washington. Can you explain the situation?" I recounted the events as clearly as possible, explaining the history of estrangement and the sudden appearance of my family members with luggage and plans to move in. As I finished, the front door opened and Karen emerged, her expression shifting instantly from anger to wounded innocence when she spotted the police. "Officers, thank goodness you are here. My daughter is having some kind of breakdown. We came to help her and she threatened us." The performance was impressive. Karen's voice quavered perfectly, her eyes wide with fabricated concern. Jason appeared behind her, quickly assessing the situation and adopting a similarly concerned expression. "That is absolutely false," I stated firmly. "These individuals arrived unannounced at my home with luggage, entered without permission, and refused to leave when asked. I have not lived with them in over 15 years. This is my home, purchased solely by me. They have no legal right to be here." Officer Washington turned to Karen. "Ma'am, do you have any documentation showing you have a right to be in this residence? Your name, on the deed, a lease agreement, anything of that nature?" "I am her mother," Karen replied indignantly, as if that settled the matter. "Family has rights. She has 3 bedrooms and lives alone. It is selfish to refuse shelter to your own family." "Actually, ma'am, family members do not have automatic rights to another family member's property," Officer Collins explained. "If Miss Taylor owns this home and wants you to leave, you need to comply." "This is ridiculous." Jason stepped forward aggressively. "We have nowhere to go. She cannot just throw us out on the street. Sir, please lower your voice and maintain your distance, Officer Washington warned. If you do not have legal right to be here and the homeowner wants you to leave, your options are to leave voluntarily or be removed and potentially charged with trespassing. Karen's face contorted with rage, her concerned mother act dropping instantly. She would not even have this house if it were not for us. We raised her, we sacrificed for her. She owes us. Officer Collins turned to me. Do you have documentation proving ownership of the property? I nodded and retrieved my deed and recent mortgage statement from my home office, passing through the living room where my mother and brother now stood fuming. When I returned, I handed the documents to the officers. Everything appears in order, Officer Collins confirmed after reviewing the paperwork. The house is solely in Amanda Taylor's name. She turned to Karen and Jason. I need to ask you both to gather your belongings and leave the premises. We are not going anywhere, Jason declared, crossing his arms. This is family business. The police have no right to intervene. Sir, that is incorrect. Officer Washington stated firmly. This is a clear case of trespassing. You have been asked to leave by the legal property owner and have no documentation supporting your right to be here. If you refuse to leave voluntarily, we will have no choice but to remove you and place you under arrest for criminal trespass. As this confrontation unfolded on my front porch, a car pulled into my driveway. Stephanie emerged, her face paling when she saw the police officers. Behind her, Laura appeared from next door, drawn by the commotion. What is going on? Stephanie asked, approaching cautiously. Your sister called the police on us, Karen spat. After everything we have done for her, this is how she repays us. Laura stepped forward. Officers, I am Amanda's neighbor. I can confirm she has lived here alone for years, and these people have never resided here. I have witnessed them arriving just this morning with luggage. That is helpful information. Thank you, Officer Collins nodded. Stephanie, you knew about this? I asked, the pain of betrayal fresh again. You helped them plan this. Stephanie looked at the ground, unable to meet my eyes. They said they just wanted to talk to you, to reconcile. I did not know they were planning to move in. Her voice lacked conviction, and I knew instantly she was lying. Your text messages say otherwise, Jason snapped at her. You told us she had plenty of room, that she was doing well financially, that we should just show up because she would not turn us away if we were already here. Stephanie's face crumpled as her duplicity was exposed. I just wanted us to be a family again, she whispered. A family does not manipulate and scheme. I replied, my voice steady despite my emotions. A family does not abandon someone in their time of need, then try to force their way back in when it benefits them. Officer Washington had heard enough. Sir, ma'am, this is your final opportunity to leave voluntarily. Please collect your belongings from inside and exit the premises. For a moment, I thought they might refuse and actually be arrested, but self-preservation won out. Karen and Jason stormed back into the house, returning minutes later with their suitcases. As they walked toward their car, Karen turned to deliver one final blow. You will regret this, Amanda. No one turns their back on family without consequences. We will make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. I am exactly the kind of person who will protect herself from toxic relationships, I replied calmly. Even when those relationships are with family. As they drove away, Stephanie remained, tears streaming down her face. Amanda, please. I did not mean for this to happen. They manipulated me too. But you let them, I said quietly. You knew how much I had struggled. You knew what rebuilding my life cost me. And you still helped them try to take advantage of me. What can I do to make this right? She pleaded. I looked at my sister, seeing for the first time how much she resembled our mother in her inability to take responsibility. You can start by being honest, Stephanie. Not just with me, but with yourself. They did not manipulate you. You chose to betray my trust. You need to own that before anything else can be addressed. She nodded slowly, reality seeming to sink in. You are right. I knew what they were planning. I thought if we were all together again, things would be better somehow. I thought you would see how much they needed help and would want to give it. After how they treated me, after today, there is no coming back from this, Stephanie. Not with them. With you, maybe someday. But you need to make some serious changes first. The officers, satisfied that the situation was resolved, prepared to leave after providing me with information about obtaining a restraining order if necessary. Laura stayed by my side, her silent support more valuable than she could know. As Stephanie got back in her car, defeated and alone, I felt an overwhelming mixture of emotions. Sadness for what family should have been but never was. Anger at the betrayal. Relief that I had stood my ground. And beneath it all, a surprising sense of peace. I had faced my worst fear confronting the toxic dynamics that had shaped so much of my life, and I had emerged stronger. This decisive moment marked not just the physical removal of Karen and Jason from my home, but the emotional removal of their power over me. I had finally broken free from the obligation I had always felt toward people who had proven repeatedly they did not have my best interests at heart. As I thanked the officers and Laura for their support and walked back into my house, alone but unburdened, I knew that the family I had been born into was not the family that would sustain me going forward. That was a painful truth, but also a liberating one. It was time to fully embrace the life and the chosen family I had built for myself. 6 months passed since the day I called the police on my own mother and brother. 6 months of profound change, healing, and growth. The restraining order I filed after the incident provided legal protection, but the emotional boundaries I established provided something even more valuable: peace. Phoenix marketing continued to flourish. We had outgrown our small office space and moved to a larger location that could accommodate our team of 7. The client list had expanded to include several national brands alongside our loyal local businesses. What had begun as a desperate attempt to survive had evolved into a thriving company with a reputation for innovation and results. My home, once nearly lost, then nearly invaded, had become a true sanctuary. I completed the renovations I had long planned, creating a space that reflected who I had become. The spare bedroom that Karen and Jason had tried to claim now served as a peaceful reading room filled with books and natural light. The backyard garden had expanded, becoming my favorite place to unwind after busy workdays. But the most significant changes were not physical or financial. They were in the relationships that now formed the foundation of my life. Laura had become my closest friend, our Sunday brunches a weekly tradition. Michael and I had grown closer as well, our friendship deepening into something that held promise for more. The team at Phoenix had become a tight-knit group who celebrated each other's successes and supported each other through challenges. As for my biological family, the situation had resolved differently with each member. Karen and Jason had made several attempts to contact me despite the restraining order, leaving voicemails that alternated between angry accusations and tearful pleas. I deleted them all without response. Eventually, the messages stopped. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned they had moved to another state, sharing an apartment, and the same toxic dynamic they had always had. Stephanie was a different story. After the confrontation, she had entered therapy, recognizing patterns in her behavior that had made her susceptible to manipulation. 2 months later, she had reached out with a handwritten letter, taking full responsibility for her actions, without excuses or expectations. It was the first step in a slow, cautious rebuilding of trust. When she found a job opportunity in my city, I helped her locate an affordable apartment and even hired her for some freelance work at Phoenix. Our relationship would never be what it once was, but it was evolving into something perhaps more authentic. She was joining me and my friends for dinner tonight, another small step forward. As I prepared the dining room table for guests, I reflected on the profound lessons of the past 2.5 years. I had learned that family is not defined by blood, but by behavior. The people who stand beside you when you are at your lowest, who celebrate your victories without jealousy, who respect your boundaries and support your growth, those are your true family, regardless of genetic connection. I had discovered my own strength, a resilience I never knew I possessed, until circumstances forced me to find it. The woman who had curled up in despair on her couch, wondering how she would make her next mortgage payment, would not recognize the woman I had become. Not just professionally successful again, but emotionally whole in a way I had never been before. Perhaps most importantly, I had learned the power of boundaries. Setting and maintaining them was not selfish, as Karen had claimed, but necessary for well-being. Saying no to toxic relationships, even when they came wrapped in the package of family obligation, was an act of self-respect. The doorbell rang, announcing the arrival of my first guests. Laura entered with a bottle of wine and a warm hug. Michael followed with ingredients to prepare his specialty dessert. Soon, Stephanie arrived, slightly nervous but welcomed. 2 colleagues from Phoenix completed our gathering, bringing laughter and stories from the work week. As we settled around my dining table, the contrast between this gathering and the one my biological family had tried to force could not have been more stark. Here was genuine warmth, mutual respect, and authentic connection. Here was a chosen family built deliberately through shared experiences and demonstrated care. "I would like to propose a toast," Laura said, raising her glass. "To Amanda, who taught me what real strength looks like, who showed all of us that it is never too late to rebuild, to start over, to create the life and the family you truly deserve." As glasses clinked and smiles were exchanged, I felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over me. The journey had been painful, the lessons hard-won, but sitting here surrounded by people who genuinely cared for me in the home I had fought so hard to keep, leading a company born from adversity, I would not change a moment of it. True family, I had learned, is not about obligation or blood ties. It is about love, freely given, boundaries respectfully maintained, and support offered without expectation of return. It is something we create through our choices, not something we are born into by chance. That was the deepest lesson of all, and one I would carry forward into whatever challenges and joys the future might hold. If my story resonates with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember that chosen family can be just as meaningful as biological connections. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I hope it brings some comfort to those facing similar struggles. We are stronger than we know, especially when surrounded by people who truly support us.